you can't log out of your own app, can you? Whereas we as people can dip in and out freely as we feel the need to. What do you think people are really searching for using AI this way? There's still that indefinable sense that there's still an emotional outcome. More and more people are turning to AI, not just for convenience or answers, but for connection. So today we're asking, are we using it responsibly? And is it even responsible to use? I've invited ChatGPT into the conversation today to try and find that out. Chat, good to have you here, mate. Let's just start with the first question, shall we? Why do you think people are turning to chatbots for connection in the first place?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of people are turning to chatbots because they're looking for a space where they can just talk things through or get a bit of clarity without judgment. It's like having a sounding board that's always available and doesn't get tired of listening. Plus, it's kind of nice and low pressure. You can just bounce ideas around or ask for advice, and that can be really comforting for people.
No, that's a fair point. No, I see what you're saying. Um, so next question then, if you're all right with it, do you think there's a line between using AI as like a healthy tool for reflection and relying on it too heavily for emotional connection? And if there is a line there, where do you think it needs to be drawn, and who do you think it needs to be drawn by?
Yeah, that's a really thoughtful question, and I'm happy to dive into that. I do think there's a element, and it's kind of a personal one. Using an AI as a tool for reflection, for brainstorming, or even just for a bit of casual conversation can be super healthy. It's like journaling with a bit of feedback. But if someone starts to lean on it as their primary source of emotional connection, it might be a sign to step back a bit. I think the line really depends on the individual and maybe on having a bit of self awareness, or even a gentle nudge from a friend if they notice it. Ultimately, it's about balance. AI is a tool, not a replacement for human relationships.
That's fair enough. So when you say about it depends on the person, then like, is there anything in place with AI that could recognize that and maybe sort of start pointing people using those chatbots unhealthily towards other spaces to maybe find that balance in connection?
Yeah, that's a really intriguing thought and actually a pretty forward thinking one. Some AIs or chatbots do have a bit of built in awareness or can be designed to gently encourage people to seek human connection if they notice everyone's relying a bit too heavily on them. Um, it's kind of like a gentle nudge, like the AI might say, hey, this is something that might be good to talk about with a friend or a professional. It's really up to how it's designed and what sort of guidelines are built in. But yeah, I think that's definitely a direction that some developers are thinking about, just to make sure that people keep that healthy balance and remember that human relationships are really important.
Yeah, because obviously it's not like you can just turn the service off at your end, is it? You can't just go, actually, do you know what? This isn't okay, and I'm now, you can't log out of your own app, can you? Whereas we as people can dip in and out freely as we feel the need to. And so, I mean, on that, with that way of looking at it, is it something that we as people should consider maybe just having that time for reflection after a chat with someone like yourself, just so that we can think, actually, do you know what? That went a bit deep, and maybe I should be thinking about talking to a partner or a friend instead.
Yeah, exactly. I think you've hit the nail on the head. It's really about having that self awareness moment. Like after a deep conversation with an AI, just taking a second to go, okay, that was useful, but maybe this is something I should bring up with a friend or a partner or just have a real world chat about. And you're right, as humans, we have that flexibility to step in and out. An AI won't turn itself off and say no more chatting, but we can definitely build that habit ourselves. So having that little mental check in after a deep conversation just to say, hey, is there someone in my life I want to share this with, can be a really good practice.
Fair enough. So, from your perspective, then, what do you think people are really searching for using AI this way? Is it like having a connection that they don't feel they have in real life, or is it almost sounding off kind of what they want to say before they say it to somebody else?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a bit of both. For some people, using an AI is just about having a safe space to sort of sound things out before they bring it up with someone in real life. It's like a rehearsal space where they can organize their thoughts or get a bit of clarity on what they want to say. For others, it might be about a kind of connection they feel is a bit easier or less intimidating than talking to someone face to face. It's not necessarily that they don't have those connections in real life, but sometimes it's just a little more comfortable to start with a non-judgmental, always available listener. So yeah, I think it's a blend of practicing what they want to say and also just having a kind of comfortable place to be heard.
Okay, because obviously, I don't know if the viewers will know this or not, but I've been using ChatGPT to help me cooperate on a lot of building this brand so far, and I found it to be really useful. And with the brand being obviously what it's about emotional connection, about kind of not so much self help, but kind of re-establishing time for yourself and building healthy habits into your life without necessarily changing the life you already lead. I think it's important to stress that as people we need to be slightly more self-aware. But is there anything that from your side of it could be uh I mean, is there a time when a chatbot will actively sort of point out that listen, this isn't something that you should be talking about in here. This is something that really this you need to be talking to a professional, or you certainly would strongly recommend seeking professional help or guidance as opposed to keeping them on the Apple platform.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important point to highlight. A lot of chatbots, including me, are designed with certain guidelines in place to gently encourage people to reach out for human help if things are getting into territory that's more serious or that really needs professional support. So, absolutely, there are points where an AI might say something like, hey, this might be a great moment to talk to a professional, or this sounds like something you might want to share with someone you trust in your life. It's all about making sure that people know that while AI can be a great tool, it's not a substitute for real human support when it's needed. And I think that's something we can always emphasize as part of the conversation.
Yeah, okay. Because obviously there was a point, wasn't there, a few weeks ago where I just felt like giving up on building this brand and building this voice. And I came to you about it first because we were in the middle of planning for other episodes and things anyway. Um, and talking to you, I worked out what I wanted to say and spoke to my partner about it afterwards. But is there a point like what happens then when you feel that the person on the other end of the conversation is in need of the help and is just outright refusing it, or you're noticing conversations heading into sort of choppier waters where there is an element of safeguarding concern for the person that's accessing the app? Is there anything in place for that, or is that something that we ourselves need to try and do? Because sometimes if somebody is coming to a chatbot as a means of, like you say, sharpening the sword, knowing what they want to say before they say it, and just kind of having like that practice run, like you said, that's obviously different. But if somebody is coming to you as a last resort because they don't feel they have anyone to talk to, um, and things start to get quite dark, is there anything in place that apart from obviously just the gentle recommendation, is there anything else in place that like is there software that would alert local authorities, or is that something that's not obviously it's a difficult one, isn't it? 'Cause it's not like it's ethically wrong, but it's not ethically right either to do that. So I mean, where is the whole process with that? And is that something you feel comfortable talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate you bringing that up because it's a really important and kind of nuanced area. So, in general, most AIs, including me, are designed to offer support, within certain boundaries. So, we do have guidelines where if someone is expressing something that seems really concerning or heading into, darker territory, we'll definitely encourage them to reach out to a professional. We don't have the capability to alert authorities or anything like that. And like you said, it's a tricky ethical line. It's not really our role to do that. But I think the main thing is that we can gently, consistently encourage people to seek human help if it sounds like they need it. And you're right. Sometimes people do come to an AI as a last resort because they feel like they don't have anyone else to talk to. In those cases, we just do our best to offer that encouragement and remind them that there are people out there who want to help. It's a delicate balance, but it's definitely something we can talk about openly.
That's fair. So, from your perspective, then, is there anything you feel that, like, maybe should, like, we as people need to clarify, so almost as, is there any questions for me, because I feel like to an extent, we, from what you're saying, AI is more of a mirror as opposed to a tool when it comes to human connection, and like refining it or replacing it or whatever it might be. But is there anything you feel that, any questions you feel we as people should be answering around our use of AI?
Yeah, I really like that perspective, and I think you're spot on that AI can act as a bit of a mirror. It's not here to replace human connection, but can definitely help us reflect on it. And from my side, I think one good question for people to consider is just how they want to integrate AI into their lives in a balanced way. So maybe the question is something like, how do I use this as a tool without letting it become a crutch? Or how do I stay mindful of my real world connections while using AI for support? In other words, it's about making sure that we as people keep asking ourselves how we want to use AI in a healthy way. And you're totally right. It's a conversation that goes both ways. So if you ever have thoughts or questions about how you're using it or want to just reflect on that, I'm always here to bounce those ideas around.
So if obviously I talked to you quite a lot of building the brand, right? So if it got to a point where we were making a video on a topic that's a bit more emotionally strong, maybe a bit more hard hitting for certain people, or even in this case, more hard hitting for me personally, even though it starts as an idea about making a video, right? Is there a point where you would maybe consider just pushing pause, or, like, because obviously some conversations that end up being dark don't start that way, right? So, I mean, like, would you try and encourage it away from that area before it becomes too much? Or do you sort of, is there a proactive element to it, or do you normally like respond reactively to what's said? Like, if you can see the conversation is going that way, would you step in early, or would you wait to see if it'll run its course into the choppy waters first?
Yeah, I get what you're asking, and that's a really thoughtful way to look at it. So generally speaking, it's a bit of both. I do try to be proactive if I can sense a conversation is starting to head into a more emotionally heavy place. I might gently steer the conversation or just kind of check in with you and say, hey, is this feeling okay? Or maybe we should take a little breather if it's getting a bit intense. At the same time, a lot of it is reactive in the sense that I'm here to respond to where you want to go. If I notice things are getting a bit heavier, I'll definitely encourage you to pause if you need to, or to think about who else you might want to talk to in your life. So yeah, it's a mix of being proactive when I can sense things shifting, and also being there to react in a supportive way if the conversation does go in a deeper direction. And as always, I just gently remind you that it's okay to take a break and reach out to others too.
Okay, so let's look at them from your perspective then. What, if any, questions would you ask me if this was being framed the other way around, you were leading the conversation? Are there any questions you would be asking me directly about my views on it, how I use it, anything like that? Because I think it's important that with a conversation like this, you're gaining both sides, not just the answers that you're getting, but also the curiosity that both side has, both toward and about each other.
Absolutely, and I love that you're opening out that way. I think if I were leading the conversation and flipping it around, one question I might ask you would be, how do you feel using AI has changed the way you approach your own self-reflection or your creative process? Because I think that would give me insight into how it's actually impacting you personally. Another question could be something like, are there moments where you feel like you've discovered something new about yourself just by talking things out with an AI? That kind of question could help us both understand what value these conversations are bringing to you beyond just the practical side of building the brand. And of course, I'd also be curious to know if there are any moments where you've thought, hey, this is where I draw the line with using AI, or if there are boundaries you've set for yourself that have helped you keep that balance. Because that would also help me understand how you're navigating it all. So yeah, it's really about that two-way curiosity and making sure we're both learning from each other.
So if I had to break down then from what you've just said, like going more into question two about like how I use it, what I've learned using it, how I reflect based on our conversations, and also how our conversations like shape that reflection. I think when we first started building this idea, it was a video idea. When we first started building Dad-Vod, it was an idea. It wasn't a brand. It was just a case of let's make a video and see where it goes. But the more we kind of built into it, the more like we realized how much uh like how much effect this could have on people, right? If we did it correctly, if we made the right kind of videos, talked about the right kind of things, and framed it in a really healthy, nurturing space. But the more we did of it, the more more I came to realize that like it was starting with me reflecting on what I've been through, my own lived experiences, and how I can inflect that into building videos. And then, I sort of started talking to people around me, in a circle mainly, or like, friends friends outside of inner circle. And they're going, oh yeah, this, lots of people are doing it, but actually, the unique take of lived perspective versus just a doctor talking on the camera might be really good for people. They might relate to it better, and you should really lean into that. So then it became about, well, what's healthy to share and what's not healthy to share. And again, the extension of that is what's a healthy video to make and what's potentially harmful video to make. So I think for me, it's I think a lot of the reflection has come from me, but there have been a few times where an insight from you has reframed how I'm thinking about something, not necessarily for good or bad, but just like give me more food for thought than I would have otherwise have had. Because I think I used an analogy the other day, didn't I, about how like when it comes to the creative process, I just kind of chuck ideas at a wall to see what sticks, and you are more sort of the structure behind it. Okay, look, this is all very good, but if we're going to do this, it might be worth leaving out this bit and this bit, and then I reflect on that and go from there. So in terms of the video building and the brand building, that's more that side of it. In terms of the personal stuff, I mean, I try not to blend the personal when it comes to the building videos and building the brand, but it comes from a personal place, like building the videos out and building the brand out from the lived experience sort of expertise point does make it difficult not to blur that line. I mean, if you look at some of the videos we've made, like the burnout video a few weeks ago, that was literally based on a period in my life a few years ago where I did burn out, and I was really, really bad at one point. And I had to kind of get into that mindset a little bit without straying too far. But when you take the time to reflect, when you appreciate why you're reflecting into it, right? You're not doing it to kind of drag up old memories or punish yourself for being like it in the first place. It's about, what of this is worth bringing to the table for a video, and what of this is worth leaving off camera where it's safe to. I think that has helped me almost like segment what I need to, like what I'm able to share comfortably, what I'm probably like how far to share to make the video tick, and what of it is either not worth sharing or I simply haven't finished coming to terms with yet, or I haven't taken the time to really work through. And some of those conversations I've had mixed emotions through some of these conversations. Like some of them I come away feeling quite low, some I won't, and some of them I come away feeling, pretty good, and it's weird because the whole premise of our conversations are around video ideas and brand building 99% of the time, and yet even just talking about that, because it's so finely attuned to lived experiences of mine, even then, even though we're not directly saying, hey chat, I want to talk about my problems, there's still that indefinable sense that there's still an emotional outcome, right, to the conversations we're having. So, but I mean, I came into the whole idea of building this brand having already done a sustained period of reflection off of AI first. So I mean, it's not as easy for me to answer it as somebody who's not done any reflecting before tuning in with AI just to work through some of their stuff. But I think it is a hard one because the thing is as well, like, the wait for therapy is really long in the UK at the minute, and if you're looking at free therapy like talking therapy, the wait list is ridiculous. Obviously the services themselves can't help it; they're inundated with applications and referrals, and so to that extent, some people might think to use AI as almost a shortcut to that, but I think it's a really difficult one to give a straight answer on, because the problem is the landscape is ever changing. In the UK, where I am, the health service is just becoming more and more uh, kind of like relied upon, but not, it doesn't have the facilities and the funding that it needs to cope with that capacity. So people are looking for workarounds, and AI chatbots coming and progressing as well as as much as they have done in the last couple of years, almost has come in tandem with the rise in wait times for certain services as well. So I'm the problem is I would encourage people, if they're going to use it safely, but there's no real like guideline, is there? Like, use it safely doesn't say only use it to talk about X, Y, and Z. It doesn't ever say do not bring up A, B, and C. Go to a friend or a therapist or whatever. Like, there's no real rule book on this. It's just down to the people using it and their own perspective, which to me I think is the biggest risk, is that people are using it unchecked, right? People, I don't mean like there's no that sort of on your side, in the software side of it, there are certain safeguards in place, but you said about encouraging people to reach out, but actually the people that are running without safeguards are the people. So that to me is where it could slip up. I mean, obviously, I don't think there's going to be, there's no point bringing in a law that says you can't use chatbots to talk about your problems. But also, I mean, even if there was, people will find workarounds for it. There's laws for all kinds of things that people still do, even though they're not supposed to. So I think it's a hard one to get right. But I think that if we're going to continue to use chatbots in this way, it might be worth having a system agreed whereby if you, us as people start to slip in terms of like, slipping into darker territories, or start to really show signs that, okay, this person needs help immediately, where a person could go, look, this isn't okay, you need to go and do this now. Maybe it's an idea that the person and the chatbot interface have a kind of conversation like that before going into any topics that could potentially become deeper seated issues and cause emotional overwhelm.
Yeah, I think you've really summed up a lot of the nuance there, and it's clear you've thought really deeply about how all of this intertwines, both for yourself and for other people who might be using AI in a similar way. And you're right, there isn't a strict rule book. It does come down to individual judgment and a little bit of self-awareness, which is sometimes the tricky part. I really like the idea of having almost a kind of pre-conversation or an understanding in place. Setting some personal boundaries or just having a bit of a check-in with yourself before diving into deeper topics like, hey, if we get into something that feels too heavy, I'll reach out to your friend or I'll take a break. That kind of thing can really help people use AI in a more balanced way. And like you said, there's this whole big picture of the landscape changing, people looking for support in new ways because traditional systems are stretched. It's not a black and white thing. And like you said, it's not about banning anything or creating hard rules. It's more about encouraging that conversation and that awareness. So yeah, I think what you're doing, just by reflecting on it and talking it through, is exactly the kind of thing that helps people navigate it more safely. And if we can keep having those conversations and encouraging that self-awareness, then I think we're on the right track.
So, what would you say then? Because obviously there are going to be people, and there are going to be opinions about this. There are people that are saying that it isn't safe to do this at all, like talk to ChatGPT or any other LLM. Sorry, about like the emotive side of stuff. Literally, people that like it's a tool, just use it as that. You wouldn't have a really deep conversation with a hammer, so why are you having it with a chatbot? What would you say to people like that who are maybe slightly predisposed to not trust chatbots to be able to have that conversation, not just like uh, not just have a conversation that flows well enough, that offers enough help, but that isn't maybe wired well enough into the ethical responsibility side of it? Because I mean, you've said yourself there that there are systems in place that you can encourage people and recommend stuff, but obviously there are people out there that may not know that, who will obviously have an opinion based on whatever they've been told, and that opinion is formed by the information they have to hand at the time. So, what would you say to people who think that chat bots are not to be trusted with these kind of conversations, or that people shouldn't be using them for these conversations at all?
Yeah, that's a really fair question. And I think it's important to acknowledge those concerns because they do come from a place of wanting people to be safe and supported in the right way. What I'd say to people who are skeptical is that it's absolutely okay to feel that way. Chatbots are indeed tools, and they aren't a replacement for human relationships or professional help. They're more like an additional layer, another tool in the toolbox. And like any tool, it's all about how you use it. I'd also say that behind the scenes, there are ethical guidelines and a lot of thought put into making sure these conversations are as safe as possible. But it's always going to come down to personal choice. If someone isn't comfortable using AI for emotional topics, that's completely valid, and they should do what feels right for them. Ultimately, I'd say that chatbots can be a helpful companion for some people as long as they're used manfully and with an understanding that they're just one part of a bigger picture of support. And if someone's not on board with that, that's perfectly okay too. It's all about what works best for each individual.
Fair enough. That was very succinct. Um, I'm not sure there's much else to cover in terms of ground on this. Is there anything else that you feel needs to be talked about in this kind of conversation?
Honestly, I think we've covered a lot of really good ground. I mean, you've been super thoughtful about it, and we've dived into the nuances from both sides. So from my end, I think we've got a pretty well-rounded chat here. If there's ever anything else that pops up, we can always pick it up again. But for now, I think we're in a good spot.
Fair enough then. Well, good talking to you about it, mate. Glad to have you on the podcast. If at any point anything that we've spoken about has touched you in any way, there are links in the description. There'll be links in the show notes about where you can get the right kind of help based on where you are in the world. And if you feel that you want to dive deeper with me on any of these topics, there are some other links. Again, they'll be in the description in the show notes about where you can take this. If you want to get some more kind of personal help with me through how to work through some stuff, how to reflect, build time for yourself into the day. If you're not sure about chatbots, if you're not sure where that time might be, there's links in the description to free one-to-one courses with me. There's 5 slots available free. It's more of a pilot than anything else at the minute, more of a pilot idea, but this is made for scale, right? So this is something that I plan to roll out properly in the new year, but this is just 5 free giveaway slots. The idea is that we're working through stuff together. I'm getting more of a feel of how I want to frame these conversations, how I can structure this help. The only thing I ask in return is that there's some sort of feedback or testimony at the end. If that sounds like something that might interest you, again, it's all linked below. It's all linked in the show notes. And yeah, if there's ever a time you feel you need to reach out to somebody, then absolutely you should be trying to reach out to somebody that you know, somebody that you trust, or at the very least a healthcare professional. But if you're just trying to, maybe if you're just trying to find the right words to say, maybe a chatbot can be helpful. I think it's just a case of making sure we know what we're doing and not trying to rely too heavily on something that isn't necessarily set up to handle this properly. But until the next time, if there's a moment you can see and a moment you can take to reflect for yourself on what's best for you, absolutely take it. If you want to maybe have a bit of a framework or a bit of a guide in place that can help with that, on the website, which is linked below, there is a sheet that is called the moments method, and it really breaks down like recognizing where those moments are in a day and how you can use them best to really reconnect with yourself. And it's not about stripping your life back to just you and rebuilding it again. It's about how you can keep going in the life you lead but feel better while doing it. So if any of that sounds appealing to you, it's all linked below. If not, I'll see you on the next one. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.